Good evening, everyone. My name is Ron Crossan. I am the Vice Chair of the Southside Cultural Center, and on behalf of the board and the staff here, we want to welcome you to this great forum. So, without further ado, I want to welcome Mike from Motif to get things started. Have a great evening.
Thank you, sir. Let's hear it for the Southside Cultural Center. We're very grateful for them and their board for donating this space for tonight's event because arts matter to all the arts organizations in Providence. So the rules of engagement tonight are that we do have slips available to you back at the table when you first came in. If you didn't check in, you might not have gotten one. That's Allie waving. Anytime during the proceedings, if you have a question you'd like us to consider, please see Allie. We won't have time for all of them. So we apologize that not all of your questions will be addressed, but we will be trying to sort them in terms of relevance to the arts in Providence and in terms of whether they've already been asked or not. We also have a great panel that we've assembled today, and they'll be asking certain pre-thought-out questions of the candidates. Each candidate will have about 3 minutes to respond. They can pose questions of each other through the panel, and the panel may pose follow-up questions. So we want it to become more of a conversation about the arts and less of a formal debate, but we still want to try to be as even-handed as possible. So candidates, we may ask you to stop talking if it's needed, and we appreciate your consideration for that sort of equity between you. Our panelists are Tracy Solomon White from the podcast Little State, Big Voices. We have Shahida Ali, also with Little State, Big Voices. Both of these ladies are also involved in so many other things that I can't list them all, including RI Latino Arts, which is one of the groups that helped put tonight together. Thank you. We have Umberto Crenca, who probably doesn't need an introduction to this group, but he is representing Stink Tank, which is a new organization that you might want to find out more about during the break or afterwards. It's essentially a unjuried, organically evolving network to support artists and arts in Providence. And it's got some exciting stuff ahead of it in the near future. And also, you probably know him as the founder of AS220 as well. And Mike from Motif will be one of the panelists, which is me. We want to thank the organizations that helped make this possible, which includes Southside Cultural Center, Stink Tank, RI Latino Arts, Marta Martinez, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight because of a temporary health issue. But yeah, let's hear it for Marta. She contributed a lot to the planning. We want to thank Mr. Smiley for coming up and his advanced team for coordinating everything. And we want to thank Mr. Morales for coming up. And without further ado, let's ask the candidates to mount the stage. And thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Full disclosure, both of these gentlemen have supported my art. So I don't know where to go with that. I'm going to start with a very open-ended question because I'm curious about your perspective on this. Talk to me or us about what role you think the arts played in the Providence Renaissance.
Well, first and foremost, I just want to thank all of our friends for taking the time to be here, to our neighbors, to our artists. Thank you for caring about the future of our city. Thank you again for showing up, because this is why these types of conversations matter, to talk through why public art is so important, and the role that it plays in our city is one of storytelling. It's about telling the story of Providence, neighborhood by neighborhood, and ensuring that as we continue to evolve as a city, that our history, but our future is reflected in what we might see when it comes to murals that are on public buildings, when it comes to the paintings that we see on utility boxes, but it's also about how we elevate the voices of so many artists through the means of spoken word, through live theater and free expression. And so I believe that the city's role when it comes to public art is making sure that we're empowering our third spaces, like our organizations like New Urban Arts that do such incredible work uplifting our young people to think through how they can be a part of the creative capital that makes Providence special. Organizations that are actively on the front lines, like Teatro ECAS, that provide our Latino community with access to live theater, but most importantly, an opportunity for those that want to pursue a potential career in acting or be able to have access to recreation, to be able to enjoy themselves. And the way that the city has to play a role is by making sure that these organizations are supported through the means of ACT grants, yes, but also when it comes to technical support. Technical support to make sure that we're able to have these types of gatherings and third spaces readily available throughout the year. And when
David, excuse me. The question is very specific. Yes. I really would like to hear about your perception of the role of the arts in the Providence Renaissance. How did we get here, and what was the role of the arts specifically to that question, please?
Oh, it's about activating our spaces. We think about the origin of AS220, what was once an empty storefront on Empire Street transformed into an art scene that provided so many young people in particular an opportunity to be able to engage with the arts. And what we saw as a result of that was, again, more live spoken word that wasn't just limited to one venue, but it was happening across the city. When we think about the Providence Renaissance as a whole, it was about activating our communities, where you could have a library that was now hosting spoken word, where you could have parks that were now actively engaging so many neighbors to think through how do we, quote unquote, beautify our community without having to necessarily correlate it with gentrification? How do we make sure that the arts is actually a reflection of how Providence has evolved? I think it's been very clear. It's been the work of artists that have had to make a lot of sacrifices, especially artists of color. I think it's artists that have gone through barriers, but have been able to continue to develop and design new types of programs. And it's led to where we are today. We wouldn't have something like the Michael Van Leesten pedestrian bridge if it wasn't for the vision that artists had about having more third spaces across our community. There is something to be said about the ways in which now we preserve it. There's a lot of concern around displacement of artists. Look no further than Atlantic Mills. But Atlantic Mills would not have been the iconic Atlantic Mills had it not been for the artists who made those affordable workspaces special. So I believe a lot of this comes back to the artists are the ones that drove Providence into this renaissance.
First of all, thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you for having a conversation specifically about the arts. I've lost count a little bit, David. I think this is maybe our 11th forum. We've had a lot of these, and this is the first time that we've been able to focus on something that's so integral to the city and to who we are and why we are a vibrant community. And I think, Bert, to your question, I think we have to go back further in time maybe than we just heard. The Providence Renaissance, really we need to go back to the 70s and 80s when this city was empty mills, abandoned buildings, and really a situation of serious economic decline. And our artists and creative communities were the ones that held on and that turned something that was not just deteriorating, but in rubble into something beautiful and created this foundation. So whether it's legally or less legally occupying spaces and turning them into creative maker spaces, founding the origins of several important and critical institutions that now make up the backbone of our cultural infrastructure, of ensuring that some of these places survived and then sadly losing a few of those battles along the way. It was the creative economy and the creatives in our economy that fought for these spaces, that kept it economically vibrant, and that filled the void when downtown hollowed out, when we were in a period of disinvestment. And so they are central to the Renaissance specifically and created the foundation for both some of the glory of today, but also are now sort of a victim of some of that success because of gentrification and other causes. But it's only because some of these places were saved and preserved by artists that now the displacement is even happening because of the trajectory that this city was on 30 years ago.
Ready for your next question? All right. How would you encourage, so the arts are not existing in a vacuum. They interact with other parts of the city. How would you encourage collaboration among agencies such as education, tourism, economic development, healthcare, housing, to integrate the arts into broader priorities for the city?
So it is critical to collaborate and to try to infuse the arts in so much of what we do. We can't call ourselves the creative capital with a straight face if it is not infused in all of our activities. And so the city's Department of Arts, Culture, and Tourism plays a central role in that. There's close and regular collaboration with the Providence Tourism Council and the Convention and Visitors Bureau for special events, for public art, for hospitality-related opportunities, but then expanding even further. Partnerships that we have with the Parks Department, for example, where we have free summer concerts throughout the summer, where we pay local artists to perform for free for our neighbors, the eLife Fund. That's happening this summer and every summer. Take it in, kind of into these larger circles as we continue to grow. Last year, we did a partnership with the Providence Housing Authority, where we were doing collage and other art making in the Housing Authority with residents in those buildings, supported with professional facilitators, but to allow the residents there to find an outlet of creative expression and perhaps to find a passion and to beautify the spaces along the way. One of the things that I'm most excited about, if I am fortunate enough to earn a second term to serve, is the collaborations that can be strengthened with the Providence Public Schools and for our students. As folks know, the Providence Schools have been run by the state for 7 years. They have just now returned to local control, and there is so much more that we can do. We have these incredibly and also specifically youth-focused arts organizations, but there's still not enough happening with students. But the opportunities for collaboration are everywhere. We try to take full advantage of them and continue to hear great ideas from the community and then try to activate and act on them. And I'm particularly proud of the collaborative spirit and the mentality that the small but incredibly impactful team that we have at Arts, Culture, and Tourism is able to have, both with community partners in public spaces and across city government, certainly.
All across Providence, we have such talented artists, including folks in this room, those that are multilingual, that want to contribute to our community. I have talked to so many neighbors over the years who have told me, I wish I could be more involved in our local public schools. And this is an opportunity that we have in this moment to be able to establish a series of residency programs that can exist within Providence Public Schools, within our Providence housing authorities, in addition to our community libraries of Providence. We have to be committed to being able to meet our neighbors, whether that's our students, whether it's our older neighbors, where they are. And what better place than to make sure that we have an active presence within our schools, especially at the elementary school and middle school level, when kids are still formulating their ideas and their own trajectory of what they'll want to pursue as they become adolescents and go into high school. I give a lot of credit to an organization like Auntie's House, based out in Onlyville in the Valley neighborhood, that focuses specifically on having a presence within our schools, but actually wants to go a step further and be able to provide after-school program enrichment. And they're doing it in a way that would be mobile in order to make sure that it's equitable. Because as we know, arts is limited at times based on one's respective zip code. And I want to make sure that the same level of support that one may find because their school's located in downtown is the same level of support that a student will find because even when their respective school is within Silver Lake or the Southside, where there may not be such a large presence of nonprofit organizations stationed there. So when I think of a mobile program, it's about making sure that we have a mayor's office that's intentional about establishing those relationships between ACT, between PPSD, and then thereafter Public Housing Authority as well. And I think in order to make sure that over the next several years that we're intentional about this, we'll have to make sure that our artists are able to account for what's going to be a livable wage in order to account for their time, in order to account for the materials and supplies, because it's not enough just to have passionate artists that want to do good for our community. It's also about making sure that they receive some layer of economic benefit in return because of the support that they're willing to lend. So I just want to reiterate once more, we have such a talented community that wants to do more within our schools, within our Providence housing authorities, within our libraries, and we should be doing everything in our capacity to make that possible. I think of the model example when it comes to public art being displayed at a local library being Mount Pleasant, which I have the pleasure of living right next to. And they have monthly artist talks where they attract local artists to have their art on display. That should be based on a residency program where we have local artists that are contributing to these galleries, but most importantly, not just leaving it at an artist talk, but actually having a sustainable weekly program where folks of all ages and all backgrounds can access the different types of arts that exist, right? Because we're not just talking about visual arts. It's also about spoken word. It's also about being able to get connected with all the different types of arts that exist, which is what makes Providence so special.
Now, I want to be clear that when we're talking about the arts, we're talking about all the arts. Music, dance, spoken word, graffiti, painting, all the arts.
All right, you're up for the next question.
You guys are doing a great job answering the questions, and I'm going to have to kind of fix mine a little because you answered so much. So, as many local artists and organizations face rising costs and diminished federal support, what role should the city play in supporting the arts? What investments would be prioritized?
I want to make sure that our artists and organizations in particular actually have access to affordable workspaces. Right now, the most common concern I hear is in relation to overhead costs. And depending on the way that a grant is written or designed, you can't always account for paying for your utilities using a grant or having to pay for the respective rent, or now the fact that you're getting met with a commercial rent hike, which again, so many organizations are having to face in this moment. I want to work towards being able to have a system in place where the city is an active partner with private property owners who have vacant commercial property, which many of us can find by going down North Main Street, by going through downtown, going through Elmwood, just going through Dean and Westminster on my way here. I saw so empty commercial buildings that I knew could serve as a robust space to be able to house local organizations, because many of our organizations do not actually own their buildings. They are having to rent, and they are at the mercy of what the respective commercial landlord is going to charge them in the following year. And we're losing more and more of what was once affordable spaces because of what we're seeing with our mills. Our mills are being bought up, leases are being renewed at a rate where rents are being doubled, and I believe that the city could play a role to be able to facilitate these types of partnerships so we have affordable leases designed for creative artists who call Providence home, in addition and specifically to organizations that have a consistent and strong track record of serving our community. And so my priority is making sure that there is an actual space for one to operate out of. Because again, we will fail to be the creative capital if all of our creatives are having to go to Hope Artiste Village or having to look for alternatives in Pawtucket or the mills in Woonsocket because they can't afford Providence.
So I'm sure we all agree, but we should say it out loud. What is happening at the federal level with cuts to the arts and the humanities is a tragedy and wrong. And so it's first important to not just talk about funding, but also talk about using our voice for advocacy to restore those cuts and to make changes and swap out the president, but also make sure that this country invests in the arts and the humanities. Because the city will never be able to replace every federal dollar. We can and should do more, and we are doing more, but that level of investment has to come from the federal government, and we are a better country when they invest in the arts and the humanities. And so in Providence and in my tenure, not only have we continued to support through ACT and through PTC, the Tourism Council, the wide variety of programs and working artists that we support along the way, we've also added 2 new ways to support that we haven't been able to support in the past. Some people may be familiar with our 1% for public art on public projects. We have broadened the available funding from that to also invest in existing cultural infrastructure. Because it's not just enough these days, particularly in the context of these cuts, to commission another mural, but rather that's of no benefit to the arts community here when cultural institutions are going under. And so now we've been able to use that existing funding for a broader range of activities to help folks stay afloat. And secondly, we really embrace and we are enriched as a community with all of the diverse cultural festivals that happen throughout the year. And cultural festivals, free public festivals, are expensive and getting more expensive. And so we now, in this year's budget, I proposed and was able to pass a cultural festivals fund, which gives us grant-making dollars to support those entities. Which are not just good for the community, but it also then creates opportunities for makers and vendors and restaurateurs and culinary artists to then be productive and make some money from these festivals. And we've seen that time and time again. We help connect folks to audience, whether it was the PVD Fan Zone this summer, all of our cultural festivals. We weren't in that to make money for ourselves. We wanted our local creatives to make money, and they did.
If elected, what is one concrete, specific policy, investment, or action you will take during your first year or your following term in office that would make Providence a stronger place for artists, cultural organizations, and the communities that they serve?
So very similar to Boston, we're going to launch what would essentially be a fund designed to have more block parties happening within our respective neighborhoods, with the expectation that there is going to be incorporations of local arts as a part of the ongoing programs. We want to be able to encourage our neighbors, especially during the spring and the summer, to be outdoors. And I think it's incumbent on the city to be able to close down our streets in order to help make that possible. And who's to say we shouldn't be doing outdoor art galleries or be able to have live spoken word performances that one can reach directly in their backyard? I love the programming and the energy that we feel during PVD Fest when the streets are closed and the energy is there, though I preferred it a lot more when it was in June. But nonetheless, you love to see that type of energy, but who's to say that can't be in various parts of the city, many PVD Fests happening across various neighborhoods. And so we want to take a step that was done in the city of Boston where they were encouraging neighbors to have these types of, again, community block parties that they were able to manage with the expectation that they would hire artists to be a part of the program. And there's various ways in which we can design this so it's equitable across every zip code. Because I want our neighbors to be able to enjoy themselves regardless of which part of the city they live in. And beyond that, I made a reference to it earlier, many of our artists are struggling to be able to have access to physical workspaces that they can afford. My administration wants to work towards establishing a creative workspace fund. A creative workspace fund that is designed for the purposes of the city being able to lease a building for the purpose of having artists actually have access to affordable studio space. Because right now in this moment, it is difficult to be able to try to access studio space despite the fact that there's so many vacant properties. But the city being able to intervene and ensure that whether, again, it's on North Main Street or in downtown or Elmwood, we can make sure that we're bringing more of this to life. I applaud the work of local grassroots artists like Tom, who manages Angel Street Galleries, and did so out of his own pocket. He transformed what was once a dental studio into an art gallery. And every single month, they're doing free art gallery shows and programs, and artists also have a space to be able to store their materials. The city should be doing that type of work, making sure that there is a space that you will be able to access for the purpose of producing your work and then being able to display it thereafter.
So I have a follow-up question for you in relation to what you mentioned about the city of Boston and the block parties. I think that is crucial and it is important. I'm a former resident of the city of Boston. And I know that this year in particular, Boston not only opened up the block parties, they offered a stipend to do so. Is that something that you would implement?
Yeah, so to be clear, right now the city of Boston offers a $700 stipend for community organizers that want to host a block party with, again, the condition that they hire local artists to be a part of the process. And so we would want to model it very similarly. Obviously, our budget is smaller than Boston, so perhaps it wouldn't be a full $700 stipend. But again, it would be a stipend designed to make sure that materials are accounted for and that artists are being paid for their contributions. But most importantly, we're able to create public joy for our neighbors.
So first, we have to fully implement our Cultural Festivals Fund. That is a very concrete, tangible, funded program. It just passed, and I look forward to executing it, and I assume it will grow over time as the cost of these events grow. And that is real. That is real and tangible, and is going to happen this year and should become a regular and recurring part of the city's budget, so that we can ensure that these events continue to thrive and create audiences and customers and performing opportunities and vending opportunities for our local creatives. Secondly, I referenced it earlier, one of the things I'm most excited about is the work with our young people in the Providence Public Schools. And one of the things that I would like to more fully explore and am excited to work on in the next 4 years is, it's not just arts instruction, but exposure to the arts and careers in the arts for our young people through partnership, both in what you might think of as either performing careers or art making, but also some of the behind the scenes jobs of set design and sound design and videography and other ways in which there are many valuable, marketable careers for our students, and to do it in partnership with working artists and professionals in the community where they would get paid for their time to help mentor and provide internships and career pathways for our young people. And we can hopefully inspire them to consider a career in the arts or in the broader creative economy.
See, now I'm starting to get wound up.
Tell it, Bert.
There's a lot of different things that have been raised here in regards to supporting the arts. Some things that are in play, some things that might be in play. I happen to be somewhat familiar with the city budget, curious about where all this money is going to come from. But more importantly to me, some of what anchors our cultural scene here in Providence, many of these organizations are on the edge right now. Many of them. These are generative spaces. These are spaces that have created leaders, have created more art, have created ideas. In my mind, are critical to who we are as a city. And we punch way above our weight in terms of the amount of cultural activity that goes on in the city. And I know because I've traveled to many cities talking about this. So the question, given that these spaces are, many of these spaces are fragile right now, two things. Where's the money going to come from? And how do you defend if investments, I want to hear your argument, in the arts when folks are facing such issues around cost of living and housing and healthcare and food costs and all of this stuff that is very real to the majority of people in our city. So how do you defend those investments? Where's that money coming from? We'll do that.
So I appreciate that, and you do. You know the city budget well. And hopefully everything you've heard me say tonight, is also realistic. The Cultural Festivals Fund is funded. The newly available funding for our cultural infrastructure is part of an existing program that just broadens the available range of use. Instead of creating some new work, it allows us to invest in the organizations and their entities that are already here. And I know very well, and I'm sure you do too, several organizations that have lost some other sources of funding, such as workforce training dollars, where a paid internship and fellowship program helps them earn funding through a different avenue that may have been cut off because of federal funding changes. And yet it is a financially responsible approach for us because it's a win-win, because we're also providing training to our students while supporting the organizations that need other revenue streams. And so these are realistic, tangible, practical solutions to the challenges that our organizations are facing, and they are all, most of them are already real in the city budget. It's about getting more creative with those funds. I don't think it does anyone any favors to make empty promises or fantasy plans when organizations are struggling, which is why the things that I've talked about tonight are either newly created in the last 4 years under my tenure, or something that is eminently doable and very tangible and real.
So we defend our investments in the arts by simply justifying and defending public joy. Our neighbors deserve to be able to have access to public art that one can enjoy through the institutions that help make it possible. Without so many of the institutions like the Steel Yard, we aren't in a position where our neighbors can enjoy being able to have access to low-cost classes and trainings or public works projects that, again, would give one exposure to some type of art that they otherwise just wouldn't be able to have access to. And this is why I go back to how important it is that we have more universal access around some of the programs that we've discussed. Being able to have an actual residency program for artists where we're able to adopt it at multiple schools, at multiple public housing authorities. And we can justify that through the means of our operating budget. Our operating budget is over $636 million. When I speak about being able to enter some of these memorandums of understanding with organizations, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars, which again is a drop in the bucket when you look at our entire operating budget. And while there are fixed expenses, with the limited discretionary funds that we have, we can justify being able to incorporate public joy as a part of living in the city of Providence. We can justify being able to lease out a commercial building for $80,000, $100,000 a year in order to make sure that artists actually have a space that they'll be able to continue creating and presenting that joy to our community. When we talk about some of the larger issues at hand, like making repairs around stormwater infrastructure because of the continued flooding, when we talk about investing in affordable homes that our neighbors are able to call home, that can be operated through our bond expenditures, which would be separate from our operating expenses. And so I share all that because there is a realm of possibility for us to be able to pursue these more ambitious ideas for the creative capital to remain creative, as opposed to limited thinking and just dealing with the status quo if this is the way it's always been and we have to deal with some of the limited opportunities that exist. If we're serious about making these types of investments, then it should be a part of our operating budget, and we should be prepared to have creative agreements with our nonprofit organizations, because the city could be an anchor and a better partner when it comes to organizations that are applying for grants, specifically grants that require a matching fund, and being able to demonstrate that the city is willing to be the funder so that matching fund is met. We have so many artists who are literal practitioners, not grant writers. We can work with our Office of Economic Development if it makes sense, or apply it to our arts and culture of tourism to be able to support with some of these grant applications. There's so many opportunities that exist to fund our arts, and I refuse to think that we're going to be limited to the existing programs we have now when our artists are in desperate need.
Okay, now that's okay. I'm pushing on this idea of what the rationale is for this investment in light of the economic conditions right now. The city made a choice to help and bail out, if you will, maybe bailout's not the right term, Waterfire, which there was a degree of controversy around that. Okay? And one of the organizations that's housed within there is not reaping any benefit from that. Mm-hmm. You know, and I question that. I can't say that I know all of what was involved in the decision, so I'm not necessarily passing judgment. I'm just reflecting on what I've been hearing and what's been told. So here we are now. We've made one huge investment in an organization. And we know the multipliers in terms of investment in arts, every study you ever want to look at, it's the best investment. You get less of a return on your money in industry than you get in making those same dollar investments in the arts or in arts education in terms of the outcomes with kids that are involved in the arts. We know this, plenty of studies, right? So again, we made one giant investment. It was controversial. What is the rationale? And maybe I probably already told you what the rationale is. I didn't mean to do that. But what is the rationale? How do you defend this? I mean, people are having a struggle here.
No, Bert, you bring up a really good point. I think, again, we have to be intentional about the investments that we can make because, again, of our limited operating budget. The fact that Waterfire Arts Center received significant subsidies from the city only to put Wilbury Theater in a position where they may no longer have a home is just wrong. There should have been a community benefit agreement written. And so I share that because, again, I think it's important for any type of investment to be very clear as to what the expectations are. The expectation that we want to make sure that artists are able to continue having a home to be able to operate in. And that's what justifies the expense. What justifies the expense is the fact that we're going to make sure that a working artist in Providence can continue to operate and create here in our city for the purposes of being able to not just display public joy, but also take a more comprehensive approach around being able to expose our young people to the arts, making sure that our seniors feel connected with community. Art is about displaying layers of public joy and engagement. And I think that that's the tool and the way that we have to present it each and every single time we make these types of decisions. And I'll just read it once more. We also have to be intentional with the way that these agreements are written.
So you did make the argument, Bert. The multiplier effect of investments of the arts is like eightfold in its return to the city. And in the Waterfire example, they're part of that same study. The amount of private spending that happens because of Waterfire is extraordinarily positive for this city's economy, overwhelmingly. And in addition to the fact that, for better or for worse, depending on how you feel about Waterfire, it has become integral to this city's image. You Google Providence, you get pictures of Waterfire. And so it was not an operating expenditure. We, through bond funding, we bought a building. And we bought a building to keep a large arts organization afloat. And the economic impact from that organization far surpasses the investment that the city made. And the city got an asset in return. So you ask, how do you defend it? How do you sell it to the community? And in the context of all of these competing priorities and very real and legitimate struggles in the community. Part of it was that we bought the building, as opposed to an annual operating subsidy or something like that. We now own that building. The city has that asset. And the feedback has been overwhelming. And it passed with broad support on the Providence City Council. And the community, most members of the community are very happy to know that Waterfire has a bright future. There was an agreement with Waterfire when we bought the building that we also, again for economic reasons, that we got them to commit to a minimum number of fires every year. Because the more fires they do, the more input there is into the local economy. And they have now guaranteed us a minimum number of fires every year because of the economic impact. And I think it is good broadly for the arts community anytime that we can talk about and not just defend but promote the economic impact of the arts.
Did anyone have a redirect on that? That was a lot. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to pass to the next question to Shadiah.
Shahida.
Oh.
That's okay. It takes a minute. So my question is, how do you intend to make sure funding and support includes the Black artists and arts of Providence?
Got to engage with the actual artists. I think what's been happening for too long is many of our artists of color and especially organizations feel disconnected from the city at times. Feel disconnected when it comes to engagement with ACT. They feel disconnected when it comes to grant opportunities that aren't actively being promoted within our communities. I love the work that, again, is actively done here at the Southside Cultural Center that has been hosting Rhode Island Black storytellers year in and year out. And that is an example of, again, an organization that continues to be able to find additional sponsors in order to make sure that that celebration happens on an annual basis. My administration is going to take that approach of actually meeting directly with many of these organizations and ensuring that they recognize that the city is here to be an asset, not to be a barrier. I've talked to local promoters of color who have had a very difficult time when engaging with the Parks Department. And they get certain layers of pushback when it comes to being able to reserve the space or the feedback that they get because they leave the area quote unquote messy, even though, again, they already paid for the expense of getting it cleaned. And so I think it's also the treatment that some of our artists feel. The treatment that some of our artists feel about whether or not government's an actual ally for them. And I feel like over the last 4 years in particular, they feel like they have been more abandoned than ever before. Under the Alor's administration, there was a very conscientious effort of making sure our Black and brown artists in particular were uplifted and elevated. And I think we saw that through the House of Glitter, for example, when they were able to tap in to be able to have access to actual real estate and have ongoing programming, especially during the COVID-19 crisis. We don't have those types of initiatives actively happening in this moment. And so I want to be very clear to our Black and brown artists. We will meet you where you are. We want to make sure that we are an active partner as a part of this fight, because we need to make sure that our communities feel reflected in the art that they are seeing. And so if that means having more access to teatro en el parque, having more theater in the parks, we want to make sure that we streamline that process. If that means having more concerts near our neighborhood parks alongside the Michael Van Leesten Bridge, we will make sure that that is possible without having to run into barriers, whether that's financial barriers or some of the technical concerns or some of the feedback that they hear from some of our department directors.
So it's critical that we ensure not just Black artists, but artists of color, previously marginalized communities, and underrepresented artists are supported through the city and through our work. And the way in which we do that is twofold, I think. One is to ensure that the leadership in the Department of Arts, Culture, and Tourism, and the people actually making the decisions, have genuine, authentic relationships with the arts community, and that they themselves are people that represent the full diversity of the city of Providence. And my team does that and has that. Secondly, when we do broader projects, public art installations, new commissions, et cetera, it's not just city staff that makes those decisions. We in-panel decision-making juries and other panels to make these decisions that are full of there's usually city representation, but then also working artists, arts leaders, and community voices, so that the decisions are being made by the community itself with the expertise, with the range of experience and ideas to make sure that everyone feels like, yes, they get a fair, transparent, predictable process and approval, but that also they understand that all applications are truly welcome. And we have done that. And for whatever you may think of politics, hopefully there is a source of pride in that the city of Providence really does lead the way in this sort of work statewide. Nobody else does what we do. And it didn't start with me, and it won't end with me, but this city continues to push the envelope in terms of best practices with respect to our public commissions, the Art and City Life Commission, the Special Commission on Commemorative Works, and the city's Department of Arts, Culture, and Tourism. There's no other city or town in Rhode Island that does what we do.
So we've talked a little bit about our young people in the elementary to high school range. We've talked about artists who have gone on into their careers and maybe looking for residencies. We haven't talked about the group in between, which is the students who are going into post-secondary education. I'm the parent of an artist who was born with a natural talent. You don't need to go to college to be an artist. You're born an artist. However, having a degree is very helpful in being able to obtain professional careers in the arts, music therapy, perhaps, other types of art teacher positions, anything that requires you to make enough to be able to afford to live in Providence, Rhode Island. What is your goal, or what is your plan for students going on to post-secondary who may not get into Rhode Island School of Design but need some additional credentialing?
So, and I feel like Bert's staring at us of how we're going to pay for all of this. My first goal is always to try to spend someone else's money, and I'm particularly proud. We should all be continuing to promote the fact that in Rhode Island, any Providence High School student can get 2 free years at CCRI, and now they can get 2 free years at RIC. You can get a 4-year college degree for free in Rhode Island if you are a Providence High School student, if you're a graduate of any Rhode Island high school. And that's a great option. And it's important for us to make sure everyone knows about that option. When I served under the previous governor and we passed Rhode Island Promise at CCRI, it was one of my proudest moments. And we had this whole conversation about what to call it. And there was pushback in the legislature because it was more conservative than the governor, that they didn't want to call it free college. But free college was critical because there are too many families, particularly first-generation college families, that they just assume it's out of reach. And they needed to hear unequivocally, simply, community college is free. And yet there are still students, because I spend a lot of time in our schools, I go to absolutely every graduation for 4 years, there are still students who don't know about it. And so we need to continue to promote the fact that any student in Providence can get a free 4-year education. That is the best pathway. That is a zero-debt pathway at fine institutions, and that's what we should continue to push.
So as a state representative who voted to make sure that we made CCRI and Rhode Island College free, I completely agree with the mayor. It's an initiative that I've been very proud of, helped be a part of. But specifically to the question, though, in terms of artists and how they're able to navigate pursuing post-secondary education while also being able to maintain the creative spirit that has helped them be driven into the arts, I believe it requires mentorship. And that's why I applaud the work of New Urban Arts, AS220, even non-arts organizations that attract artists like Young Voices. The idea that we're able to make sure that older artists that have actually gone through the experience of being a starving artist, having to navigate a multitude of jobs while carrying college debt, that's a type of mentorship that our young people should be receiving. And it's going to be dependent on making sure that our organizations have technical support from the city when it comes to applying for some of their grants or being able to tap into matching funds. As noted, we have organizations across the city that are ready to do this work and be able to promote these types of programs for our students even well after they graduate from high school and now they're in college. We should have stronger partnerships between our arts organizations and CCRI and Rhode Island College, considering that a vast majority of students that attend these public institutions are Rhode Islanders to begin with. And many of them are Providence artists. And so they should be equipped with opportunities to know that just because they're a part of the Rhode Island College community, that doesn't prevent them from going down and being able to be a part of open mic night and spoken word at AS220 on a given Thursday night. But their mentors should be able to guide them towards those opportunities so it doesn't feel like they're closed off into a different world. And I feel like right now there is a disconnect when a young person that goes through a program like New Urban Arts in high school, graduates, decides to attend college, and they feel like they're in a position where they have to just leave the arts completely. And perhaps once they have a decent paying job and they're 23 years old, graduate from college with some debt, they can go back to pursuing the arts. That shouldn't be the status quo that we subscribe to. What it should be is the continued process of practicing the arts even well after one graduates and is making their way to CCRI or RIC, or perhaps again, attending a university like Rhode Island School of Design, where so many first-generation students may not feel that level of support, but they will feel that support if it's a homegrown artist here in Providence that's willing to provide them with that mentorship. So I think mentorship is key, and being able to have continued partnerships existing with our institutions of higher education can help fill that gap.
All right, we have a redirect.
Okay, well, it's not so much a redirect because we're going into a break and then we're going to be, we've screened some audience questions. Mike, correct? Okay, but what I want to say, we haven't touched the idea of arts districts or anything like that. I know we already have a state tax deal, even though the bureaucracy for filing for taxes you don't have to pay is insane. Just saying, because I do it. But when we look at what's going on in the Valley area right now, 50 Sims, Nicholas and File, and the rest, there are over 100 studios and community organizations in that area right now. The economy shifts, those buildings turn into condos, right? What could we do, and you're not going to get a chance to answer this right now, I guess.
We could do answers to that. This will be the last question, though.
What could we do to potentially secure those spaces in perpetuity for artists?
That's a great question, Bert. I mean, we saw what happened. We saw what happened with Atlantic Mills. While there is still ongoing discussion as to what the future of Atlantic Mills is, under this new ownership, so many working artists that once had access to an affordable studio no longer have access to an affordable studio. And there are deep concerns that that could be the future of our quote-unquote Valley Arts District that we should make official. And some of the perks as a part of being an arts district would be protections specifically around zoning and having restrictions in place when there are potential new developers that are trying to come in and they want to adopt adaptive reuse and convert some of the buildings. We should have limitations in place as to what kind of conversions would be allowed. Because if they want to build housing, that would be great if they're building housing for artists who call Providence home and are actually going to offer at an affordable rate. But across the country, we're seeing disturbing trends where some of our mills are being transformed into luxury condos or luxury apartment studios where rents are kicking off at $3,000 plus. And so there is deep concern that the future of 50 Sims Avenue, that the future of what we see on Sims Avenue and Valley Street as a whole can be transformed over time. But if we have tight restrictions in place in terms of property usage, and we can designate that through a Valley Arts District in particular, then I believe that's the approach that the city should be taking. And will it upset a few rich developers that would have otherwise wanted to transform those buildings? Yes. And that's okay because we're prioritizing protecting our artists.
So I think an arts district is certainly worth a conversation, and the risk to the mills like Nicholson File are real. And whether it's through zoning protections or through preferential tax treatments in exchange for restricted covenants on how those spaces are used are tools in the city's toolbox and should be explored. But it's not just about drawing the perfect map. It's about ensuring that spaces that exist well beyond the Valley, or Valley Street, or Valley Arts District, or however you want to define that geography, are preserved. And so that speaks to all of the other work that has to happen to reduce the pressure we have on the shortage of housing that we have in this city, to make it easier, which we've tried very hard to do, to build and to grow as a city into places that don't displace anyone, but are currently underdeveloped or undeveloped, of which there are plenty still in this city. This is not Manhattan. We have vacant land for sale. And so that's where we should be focusing our growth to decrease some of the pressure on these other spaces. But I would be very open to exploring what tax treatment in exchange for restricted covenants might look like, or what zoning changes might occur to preserve some of these spaces before they're all gone.
All right. We are going to take a 10-minute break. Thank you very much. Hit the bathroom or the water or whatever you'd like. For those of you who had questions, please make sure that they've made it to the back desk. We're going to sort through those, and we'll be back with those questions in 10 minutes. Thank you.